I would like to discuss about working with the Hindu deity goddess Kali. Kali is a very empowered and powerful force to be reckoned with. She is represented as the being of destruction. She helps to remove obstacles, give us the strength to walk a path through challenges, difficulties, so that we can reach breakthrough. And she also helps us to be the warrior, to be the fighter, to essentially stand up for ourselves, to dissolve old paradigms, old systems that are not serving for the highest good. She is a being that does not fear darkness, negativity, hate, shame, fear. She is a force to be reckoned with, and in the way that she is not disturbed by the interference that comes on planet Earth, such as immense hate crime and injustice and a lot of suffering and pain that we experience in the form of genocides, in the form of aggressions and attacks against groups of people, ruining people, having a negative agenda towards people. Evil. She's not afraid of evil. So when we work with Goddess Kali, we are asking in prayer to divine love to step more fully into our fearlessness, into a shameless life, to resurrect and integrate, embody the fullness of our personal power. Very much like the 21 Taras associated with the Green Tara practice in Buddhism. You know, the red Tara represents, again, a protector. Someone who protects us against all evil, who rebukes and relinquishes any sort of evil that may be coming towards us, that may want to harm us, people around us, or even this planet. So we know the red taras, the black taras, these sort of darker colored taras associated with the lower chakra, connected to safety, protection, and removal of obstacles, clearing of bad karma, clearing of the subconscious garbage and poop that's kind of lurking in there, that's rotting. And the Bhagavad Gita talks about rotten bloodlines, which is basically outdated belief systems that have gotten so overdue for transformation that it's just rotting, like a piece of bread that you leave on the counter for weeks. It's full of mold. It needs to dissolve, it needs to decompose, it needs to destroy itself, right? So that it can continue its process of evolution, right? Everything is coming into existence and coming out of existence. Nothing is the same. There's one thing that's constant, is impermanence, change. And Goddess Kali is masterful over change, the rise and fall. You know, she's a very intense divine feminine. She's seen as very ferocious, very fierce, very sharp, very direct, a spiritual leader of real grit and nerve. A being that kind of goes into the shadowland, that goes into the underworld and retrieves people's souls and dignity. So she's sort of depicted as somewhat not being pretty, right? In the fluffy way of the pretty princess in the Disney show, right? She's not seen as this beautiful, pretty, gracious, graceful, elegant woman. She's kind of depicted as quite brutal, a warrior. She's trying to master destruction. And there are many different forms of destruction that she works with. We know chaos for chaos, which is kind of like hell, working in the hell realms, which is basically just do whatever to whoever, karma upon karma, mountains of karma, in the way that we're just destroying life because we just want to destroy. Okay, so it's reckless. And those are the real, like, hell being type of destruction. And then you have more of destruction that is in balances, right? Where you're caught in this dilemma, okay? Where you're always fighting for a cause, right? And you think that you're right? And you're fighting and always battling something. You're caught in duality, right? And this constant, never-ending fight, good versus evil, that can go on for lifetimes upon lifetimes upon lifetimes, which we've all been there. We've all been that warrior and then the victim, right? That kind of Robin Hood, where we are fighting for a cause, right? There are people who are taking advantage of people who are seen as powerless, right? And those who are almighty powerful are, stealing the livelihood, stealing the life, doing all these bad things, killing, stealing. And we want to bring order to the chaos, to bring justice, right? So there's that kind of Robin Hood destruction. In order to bring down old systems that are so stubborn and set in their ways, we have to shake things up. We have to get an arousal. We have to agitate, right? In order to really bring about a new era or change. And then there's a destruction that comes in the form of a resistance, right, to the new movement, to the new age, the new era, where there's people, or ideologies or traditions, belief systems, points of views are very set in its ways, right? Maybe it's been like that for centuries, thousands of years, and those who present new ideas challenge the old system. So the old system puts in a resistance, which is like, I want to destroy the person, place, or thing that is trying to challenge my way of thinking, right? And we know that can create all kinds of just war upon war over my ideology versus yours, my religion versus yours. And that's kind of coming from a control, right? A controlling of the people, right? So in order to control, we create destruction, which is basically keeping people down in bare minimum, right? Inputting shame and hate and pain, suffering, that kind of destruction, which is, it's a way of control to keep people in the fear so that they never really change. They never really evolve beyond what was and has always been, and what is forced upon us to continue. And then there's a real intentional destruction. And that's kind of what Kali, she works with all the different types of destructions, right? But we want to work in the destruction that has to do with the meditative mind, right? An ability to destroy the inner destroyer. It's the only way to relieve pressures, we have to put pressure. It's the only way to overcome fears, we have to go into fear. And we have to face fear, and we have to almost sort of merge ourselves with fear. right? It's like the only way to overcome darkness is you have to kind of be in darkness, complete darkness for a while, and just be engulfed by it until you become neutral to it, right? So there's a inner destroyer that is, we all have an inner destroyer in an inner creator, right? It's a part of the laws of the universe. Energy is transforming, and energy needs both to develop and to dissolve, right? That's the same thing as we are born, right? An animal comes out into life, and then animal kind of dissolves, decomposes back into nature, right? Same as human beings. It's called the ongoing, constant thing of impermanence, change, transformation. You know, energy doesn't want to stay put. It wants to move. It wants to kind of flow, and it wants to reshape and reconfigure. It wants to breathe. And it wants to kind of, breath is a movement. It's never, each breath is not the same. It's never the same. And as we go through chronology, our breaths change. We take on more movements, become fuller, become more restricted, more contracted, and then become even a lot fuller, just depending on where we're at in our energy space. So Kali helps us with when we work with Kali in the meditative mind, where we want to go into this kind of deep hypnosis, right, state, a deep state, and we want to connect to that subconscious where there's all kinds of hate, fear, phobias, negative cycles, negative behaviors, patterns that are just kind of, we're soaking in it and we don't know how to get out of it. It's stubborn. It's almost like it's become, we're set in it, right? So Kali is very, very much a force to be reckoned with, right? She can just bring down that whatever it is that's somewhat, it's destroying us. But it's so heavy in us, because it's a low vibration. Hate, shame, fear, anger is not easy. Some people spend lifetimes trying to kind of, loosen that up and kind of dissolve, right? Dissolve piece by piece, these many layers to that. But Kali comes in and it's like this force to be reckoned with and just brings out this destruction into our lives, right? And it can come up as when you start to make a conscious choice or a decision, right? An intention that, I would like to clear this addiction, or I would like to evolve beyond this habit or this way of thinking or being, or I would like to evolve beyond my comforts or my childhood or this anger, the thing that's holding me back, or the sabotage, whatever it is. Kali is like that destruction that comes in the form of we lose our job. And we're in this period of crises, this period of immense change, right? But it's a change that is so intense in the way that it really brings up a lot of our fear. A lot of our, the fear of change. The fear of being something new. The fear of moving on from something that maybe we've gotten so used to doing all the time. And then in that kind of period where we're oh my gosh, what's going on? I just lost this job. Why? There's so much this destruction, right? We really get to kind of clear the way, right? We get to clear our idea of what we can do. We can clear our way of thinking, our perspective. We've been doing things a certain way. We've had this certain job, but we're somewhat in a destructive energy. We're very angry. We're frustrated all the time. We're not happy, right? We're just full of this negative cycle with it, right? This negative mind. And Kali, that intention to bring down what is not serving for the highest good really brings in this opportunity for things to just shake up. And that shake up is not always pretty, right? The shake up of emotions, the shake up of thoughts, sometimes it really triggers and agitates. Kali is a very much a woman that will irritate people, will agitate people, because she's triggering the negative mind. She's kind of like the master of the negative mind. So if we are having just a lot of this negative cycle, she will trigger us because she will kind of agitate, irritate that negative mind, and kind of try to destroy that destroying thing that we keep doing, right? Where we're destroying these relationships, or we're destroying ourselves out of these addictions or phobias or fears, or just this way of looking at things that could be coming from a place of like just immense pollution, right? Pollution in the way of like, pollution comes from a lot of the pain and the suffering that is locked away on our subconscious. So she's kind of seen as like working with the subconscious, right? Which is the sort of shadow, we call shadow the darkness, but really it's just the hidden, right? And she knows a lot about what we need to release, what we need to let go. But she also knows that a lot of times we get very calcified in, especially, on earth, we get very calcified with these old systems. And she kind of starts out that warrior spirit in us in order to get things moving. She's kind of like, we need to get things moving towards evolution. We can't just continue to be in this system that's not really working. She's kind of like that voice of reason, that force to be reckoned with, that comes in, shakes things up, deconstructs, and even destroys some things in order to get humanity some freed up space, some freed up energy, so it can reconfigure and reconstruct into something new. So it's like Kali is helping us to be the master of destruction. Because like I said, there's many forms of destruction. There's the destruction where we're caught, an example of always fighting ourselves, fighting this, right? Thinking I'm right, thinking that person's wrong, and not realizing that we're actually creating this never-ending karma of fighting, right? That doesn't really ever get resolved. She helps us to kind of break free, right? To transcend duality, where we stop the thousands of years of fighting, I'm right, you're wrong. That is so destructive to the life force energy, right? A master of addiction that's just completely draining our life force energy. She'll come in and she'll create somewhat of a chaos, a crisis, even a near-death experience, a loss of something, to get ourselves dissolving that thing that is needing to be met with wisdom. And usually it comes from a real intention to transform, like a prayer or asking for help from divine love. So working with Kali is a lot of us work with the Kali energy without even knowing it. When we start to, become more of a warrior, right? A person seeking justice, right? Or a person who's trying to bring balance or order. A person who is a fighting spirit, who has a lot of determination, who's trying to clear, ancestral trauma, generational curses, will encounter the Kali energy within themselves. And a lot of people can sense it as like the evil eye, right? A lot of people are connected to the evil eye as like a protection, right? Against evils, right? And Kali very much is like that evil eye, right? She can put a real strong shield of light around us in order for us to be immune to these type of interference that come in to try to distract us. And it comes in very sneaky. Like Kali knows about how sneaky things are, how deceptive, illusionary. And she kind of helps us to see into the ways of destruction in the way of interference that comes in the form of desperation, right? Where we destroy our dignity out of desperation. And then that creates a life where we're in this just low vibration, right? Where we have to continue to be desperate to get what we want. And feel that great loss of ourselves, of who we truly are, of our real dignity. Kali will come in the form of personal power. When we're starting to develop personal power, we're starting to develop our life force, when we're starting to use our voice and express our wisdom, or when we even start to awaken our wisdom through experiences that usually involve some kind of transforming fear or pain, some kind of moving beyond suffering and the matrix that has us in this constant kind of shattered energy or torn energy or scattered energy or energy that has holes in it. It's like the destruction is like bringing everything down in order so we can rebuild. And for some people, it's, it really is prevalent in like what we call Saturn return in the period of time that's 28 to like maybe 32. And we have several Saturn returns throughout life. It also comes in through the planet Pluto in our astrology chart. When Pluto is all about the death and rebirth, the transformation, it's all about going through these challenging life lessons that feel like they're designed to destroy us. These life lessons, it feels like it's designed to destroy us, but it's actually there to help us master the destructive, laws of the universe, which is equal to the laws of in the creation. Destruction and creation are seen as equals. They may be polarized, and there's many different kind of expressions of that. But there also is a fine line, right? Just like two sides to one coin, there's a fine line from one side to the other. And Kali, she really does help us to the workings of the negative mind. And kind of helps us to ask questions, That negative mind is like ask questions, it's like critical thinking. Because in that negative mind, we can get really into what we think. I think this, and this is just how I'm thinking. But there's like the negative mind's like asking questions, going deeper into why we're thinking that way, and trying to see what we need to transform in order for us to come into a place of a equilibrium, where we see things from a place of being more stable in our divine love. And the divine love is like that, always that critical thought, these asking of questions. we can say a visionary quest, seeking answers. And then kind of not being afraid to get different reactions or responses. And it's like Kali comes into our life and shakes things up, right? And this is just a force of destruction. And we can see it as individual evolution or even collective evolution. And basically says, no more of this way of thinking or this pattern. This is like the higher vibration of Kali. This is like the mastery that we work with in the Kali initiation. And she's that force to be reckoned with, that kind of warrior leader, a spiritual leader that really comes in like a real manifesting force, a real manifesting energy, and kind of sets this path where everything must go. Because people have gotten too comfortable. People are so used to it, they don't even know. They're not asking questions, they're just living in it. Right? They've been so calcified, so stubborn, so fixed in it. It's like comes in, it's like we must let everything go. Everything we've gotten comfortable with that is not serving for the evolution, it's time to go. All the attachments, all the expectations, all the disappointments, even the ideas of happiness have to be reevaluated. And in that reevaluation, it always, causes this the destruction in us, right? That, that inner destroyer, right? That could have these enemies. The enemies that is shame. Well, if I let everything go, I'll be ashamed, right? That's like a seem of an enemy, right? So then it validates the inner destroyer of why I should destroy my voice, why I should destroy my passion or my creativity, or why I should destroy my livelihood, or let something else do it. Is because those enemies inside of ourselves, the shame, can be like an enemy. Or fear can be like an enemy. So she shows us so when we go through change, how do we overcome these enemies? This interference that comes in and tries to tell us all the reasons, things that will happen to us if we change. So instead of going with the natural kind of evolution, right, that is both destruction and creation, we stay in this inner destroyer that's coming from the world, right? And the pain and suffering of the world doesn't come from the divine love. Okay, destruction and creation are a part of universal laws that all planets and all systems in this multiverse are governed by. Okay, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It's in this transformation. It's constantly sort of challenging each other. It's a friction, gives energy. But then the inner destroyer is of the world. We call it of the matrix. And all spiritual scripts talk about that. About the inner destroyer. We can see it as something that's bad. Plain and simple. Something that is destroying people because of their color of skin. Destroying religion because it's different from one's own. Destroying a way of living or spirituality because it awakens people and it challenges the control. That's the inner destroyer we're talking about. And that's kind of it's almost like there's an inner destroyer, and then there's also the divine destroyer, which the Kali is like that divine destroyer in all of us that kind of comes in, faces that destroyer, which is, you can see like a doppelganger type of vibe, which the inner destroyer is a part of the world. It's man-made. It's man-made. It's a part of human condition alone. When we die and ascend and, go to other planets, that inner destroyer is completely just removed. And all we have is that divine destroyer. But that divine destroyer is with us from all planets, all dimensions, all thousands of years on Earth, or different paradigms, different ages. And that divine destroyer is like a real intention and purpose for transformation. It's like when you throw your clothes in the fire, and you're doing it with an intention to purge, right, yourself of this this pollution, right? It could be symbolized as clothes that is associated with rape, okay? And the pollution that comes and soaks in your mind, festers, molests, torments your mind, and gives you so much interference that your inner destroyer with its enemies rule your life. Rule your life. And Kali is a very ancient being. She's definitely been around for a very long time. Okay? And she's seen the madness on Earth. The hell, she's walked through the hell-being realms on Earth. She's walked through immense suffering, walked through genocide, rape, walked through trauma and mountains of karma and rotten bloodlines. She has seen it all. And she has a real perspective, a well-rounded perspective on destruction. And not just destruction as just the universal laws that kind of bring the universe in together and it's kind of fabrics of kind of weaving together with creation, destruction, death and rebirth. It's very like foundational laws to, right, the universe. She also works on, okay, so there's an inner destroyer that's associated with the man-made world. It's, or associated with the matrix, or associated with interference that has come to Earth through many, many thousands of years. And she's like, okay, I see that there is some interference going on. Okay, there's this inner destroyer with all these little enemies, and it's creating a lot of chaos for chaos, just straight up mayhem, like purposeless, right? That is creating so much stagnation or so much just this pain, right? Because destruction, that divine destroyer, it may trigger pain, but it doesn't want to stay in the pain. It actually wants to dissolve it. It doesn't want to create pain and more pain and more pain and just stay there stuck. But there's an inner destroyer with his enemies that kind of like, okay, trigger the pain, but not actually do anything, right? As a mechanism of keeping you still in this destructive, negative cycle, place where you are basically damaging yourself so that you are kind of becoming a victim, right? Because that inner destroyer is like the victim. It's in this power struggle. The victim, the warrior, the victim, and then there is the person who creates the pain, right? And then there's the warrior that's in between, right? And that's been like a power struggle that's been set up by the Inner Destroyer associated with the man-made world in those lower vibrational dimensions in the Hellbeing realms. And Kali's like, okay, how do we liberate that way of existing, a way of associating with destruction? How can we use destruction to our advantage as a human being? How can we make destruction our soul awakening instead of our great demise and chaos and everything's desperate and we lower vibration and we just completely just become stupid and no intelligence? Like we just allow it to the reason for why we can just do whatever to whoever and just create more mountains of karma and rotten people. Right? So she's like, okay, how can we, what do we need to do or be to liberate ourselves when we're going through crises, which we've had on this planet for so much. It's never ending. It's always ongoing because Earth is so activational. Earth is such its range of dimensions and realms is very high and very low. As high as you go, as low as you go, right? So it's really, really, there's a large contrast in what you'll find on Earth, right? And that's why you have to tune your vibration. And Kali is like, okay, how do we tune the vibration of destruction? Because you can tune it to Hellbeing realm, deep in there, or you can tune it to evolutionary necessity, which is like soul awakening. It's almost like you're crying, right? You're facing your demons, and you're going through maybe weeks or months of like having nightmares or crying all the time, and you're just like, you feel like you're being destroyed from the inside out. But if you go through it with an intention of soul awakening, you actually realize that you're purging yourself and you're actually developing the tools in the practice or the teaching in inner wisdom to know how to face this component to human existence in this earth system. And I think a lot of shamans, in their earlier initiations, what I've gathered from, listening to different kind of shamanistic minds in their, early phases of initiation, there's a lot of talk about having to face fear and shame and having to face the inner destroyer that kind of comes at you in a sly way, in a sneaky way, in a deceptive way, whatever way, confusion, right, with interference, right, and basically tells you that your power, you shouldn't awaken the power, or, use your own power to destroy yourself, right? And a lot of shamans, they've had to learn, like Kali had to learn, and like Krishna, and really all these divine beings, even Jesus Christ, in their own way, in their own expression, have had to learn unconditional love, had to learn divine love, had to learn to, what does it mean to make love with challenge or difficulty, to remove obstacles, to remove blockages or hexes or curses or whatever it is that, we consider something that is wanting to destroy the destruction that is needing to occur for us to fully awaken. Okay? Or that inner destroyer's constant battle with the divine destroyer. Right? Where it's like, we know we need to let go of this relationship, right? We know that it's toxic or it's just not serving for our highest good, but it's like the divine destroyer saying, put boundaries, be discerning. It's time to let go. It's time to change. It's time to transform. It's time to learn your lessons, right? And it's time to, really move beyond the subconscious fear and the shame. But then that inner destroyer is like, no. Stay in this stagnancy. Because, when you're in stagnancy a lot long enough, it's like, you people start to kind of become insane, right? Or they start to become like just severely like just unaware, or it's like it's like you start to soak in fear, right? You start to think so much, and that sort of truth, that divine destroyer comes in and says, cut it out, cut through, right? And it's very sharp, right? Comes in like this shock, right? It's like when your heart stops, you get a shock, and it's actually can be quite painful, I imagine. It's to get that shock. Or when people had that near-death experience, it's like, oh my God, I lost my life. My life has been destroyed, deconstructed. I don't have it. It's dissolved. And that near-death experience is like that shock of like, oh my gosh, a life review. I need to master these things that are holding me back so I can start to destroy the pollution, or the destruction and transformation of this negative mind, right? So this is a lot of the workings of the goddess Kali, and our relationship with her is more so, it's not an external thing. I like to see it as that it's inside of us. It's within us. It's just a teaching is what I see it. It's a teaching, not a person, right? I view it as a teaching on a certain particular area of our existence as a human being. That's actually very important. So when we, raise our vibration, or when, we become more creative, the inner destroyer becomes, a lot more powerful as well. So it's about how do we face that, right? How do we face that fear, that shame, to step more fully into our creation? How do we recognize the pathway through pain that actually sets us free? And how do we go on that? What's the experience of that? It's like looking at interference. It's like looking at the distractions, looking at the things that it's like subtle, but over time it really drains us, or it takes a toll on us, or it really just invites in this chaos. It could be internal turmoil, external turmoil, that needs a voice of reason to get it back in the grace of God. And sometimes, with, to clear pressure, sometimes to clear pressure, you need more pressure, right? To really clear it out. It's like, why do we hold, the pressure on the nervous system is like we hold particularly, yoga positions for longer times. Maybe you hold 3 yoga positions and you hold it for 2 minutes each. And it's like you're putting pressure on already. Your nervous system has a lot of pressure. But for some reason it alleviates. Right. So it's like the destruction is like when you go into your worst fear and you live it out in your mind. And it's like you come to this point where you're not so agitated or triggered by that storyline, or that, worst fear or what could happen, or the thing that's happening now, right? In the crises that always is. And a lot of times people do that in many lifetimes. We go into it to have the experience of that destruction so that we can get better at knowing how to destroy or recreate or deconstruct or transform energies in a way of strength, in a way of seeing things clearly, of being more authentic with it. Of having more wisdom about the movement of energy. And the only way to really understand the movement of energy is we have to experience it. So we do, lifetime to lifetime. And we have the karma and the mountain of karma, and we have to reap these karmas, and then, we have to dissolve the karmas, and then we have to, destroy these karmas that we've created. And we have to know how to do that. We have to know how to destroy these karmas associated with generational curses and ancestral traumas or evil eyes or whatever it is that we see as something that is fighting us, causing war in us, wanting to damage or interfere with us. We have to know what is the destroyer, the divine destroyer. That instead of creates pain and just for pain, or suffering just for suffering, but actually creates this pain of like when you're doing a stretch for 2 minutes, and it's like pain that actually is like a remedy to a deeper pain that is deep in us. So it's like we go into that pain of the divine destroyer, right? Of holding that pose for 2 minutes, right? Or, doing something that's like, it's painful, but in a very different way. It's like in a conscious, intentional pain that is created to deepen our awakening, to go into the subconscious. It's like you take the journey through the mountain. It's not an easy journey. Or the warrior, right? The warrior is like taking a path of facing these things of the world that seem so unfair and so unjust. All so that you can know what kind of, what is the appropriate sort of, what is the appropriate change that I need to create. And anything with change, for some people it's going to be complete destruction, they'll go chaotic and crazy. And for other people it's destruction that's wanted because it's ending things that are really just not making a lot of people in this secret suffering, is what I call. And then some people are liberated by the destruction in the way that it's completely releasing and dissolving, dismantling something that has really stagnated or entrapped people from their real evolution, personally, collectively, and kind of puts back this idea of the pain when we give birth is liberational. The pain when we do public speaking and we have to face a crowd of polarity. Some people like, some people don't, right? And we have to destroy that inner destroyer, right? That man-made art, worldly kind of thing that we have all of us. And when we do that, we become so much more understanding of what true destruction is, you know? And this is like many lifetimes in the making. So that we can understand that, you know, yes, we love creation and creativity and understanding that, but understanding the many kind of forms of destruction is like how we learn our lesson. So we're not getting caught in these things. We're not rotting in these things. We're knowing, you know, real, like, you know, self-psychology or like deeper meditation work has a lot to do with dissolving. More, you know, we can talk about building up, you know, building up the aura, building up the mind, positive affirmation. But in order to do that, we do have to really dissolve the deep-rooted stubbornness, to let go of aspects of self, or, you know, it's connected to generations, that is no longer serving for what we as a soul, as a sovereign mind in consciousness coming in this body, have come to do. Right? Or just the evolution of this earth that's thousands of years. Right? So we know so many stories in spiritual scripts about the, you know, divine destroyers, you know, who come in. Think of Moses and, you know, the eyes of probably, you know, the ancient Egyptian, seen in the freeing of the Israelites as a divine destroyer, on both sides. Seen as a kind of something that comes in and just kind of brings about all this force to be reckoned with, changes everything so drastically, you know, creates this pain for some people, and then like suffering, and then creates this pain of like great like exaltation for others. But at the end of the day, it's like there's an intention and purpose to evolve the energies further. Whenever you see that destruction come in, it's trying to evolve the energies further. Especially when it's the workings of the alleviating the pain that's already so heavy loaded. Right? It's like the pain of, you know, what do you call it? Cold turkey or rehab, when you've been doing this drug for years. It's almost the pain is worse than the pain of, you know, doing the drugs, but it's actually it's a pain that is awakening an understanding of wisdom, right? It's clearing the rottenness, the stagnancy, that kind of unconscious damaging recklessness. So it's like we have that, you know, destructive part of ourselves that just, you know, is of the world, that, you know, we just, you know, want to just recklessly, impulsively just destroy, right? That's kind of, you know, the lower aspect, you know, the darker aspects of Kali, right? Just to destroy. It's like a king just goes to war just because the king just feels like blood today, right? Or just seeing blood all over this, you know, the town or whatever, right? Or, you know, just feels like, you know, fighting France or something like that, right? For no real reason, right? There's no real, any kind of real awakening, real evolution to it, right? That's associated with how can I have a greater wisdom or understanding of destruction? It's kind of like I just, you know, doing it. And then there's a part of ourselves that is this destroyer that has such a vision of bringing down these things so that we can bring forth new things and the kind of change or transformation that's necessary, and the kind of inner strength we need to do that, and the kind of, understanding of destruction we need to know that inner wisdom of it, so that we can continue to walk through, that evolution, which is, again, the destruction creation, and not go insane. Some people do, or confused, or just completely just so caught in just the thoughts of it and the feelings of it, but not really an understanding of it in a more well-rounded, bigger picture. So a lot of us, we feel like spiritual attacks, spiritual warfare, right? Dark dreams, kids have nightmares, and why are these kids having these type of dreams when, they're not even exposed to this type of stuff that they're seeing, right? The astral realm, especially when you sleep, is full of pollution. It's just garbage, poop, trash, rotten, right? From all of this, the hell-being realms that we've, have, and also just a lot of, interference, control in the form of, creating systems that have a lot of shaming associated with it, especially in our dark age. But there's also a lot of divine love, right? And, that divine love is a part of the pain, like when you give birth to a child, right? Or when you clearing out an addiction in rehab, or when you're holding a stretch for 2 minutes and you're literally shaking, or when, you're getting sick because you're vomiting out some bacteria that's in you, right? Or the pain of losing a loved one and having to change your perspective on life and death, and change your perspective on love and how love can cross through dimensions. And all of it is an advancement to what we think as the death, the end, the destruction, the intense transformation, the having to completely rely on our inner strength, in a way of real vision that can cut through what we've previous thought or think now, and even these feelings that we've held so close to us, to cut through into, it's like that pressure, right? That when we go into that subconscious, we cut through and we see that there's more we see into the mystery, and we see that there's more to what we call this great existence of ourselves. And that Kali, that warrior spirit, is like that real ability to see how can we bring an understanding to these fears and shame that we have. Those two, and shame, anger, and fear, real 3 heavy-duty ones that are really a part of the man-made world. And how can we gain a wisdom around the laws of the universe? To really, gain a wisdom about the law of the universe in karma, cause and effect, and really how we can better deal and maneuver with the fear and shame. It's really, how can we have a better maneuvering or relationship or kind of workings with fear and shame, right? And we're experiencing that time and time again. In some moments it's like, this way, and other moments is this way. But it's like working with that Kali energy inside of ourselves, which is that goddess, divine feminine. It's like working with how to be able to move our light into the darkest places. It's very simple. How do we move our light into the darkest places where there is no light, where there has never been light? How do we not let the darkness consume us? How do we not allow a polluted environment or childhood make us reek of it? How do we go into the trenches, come out clean? How do we go into mountains of karma and find ourselves not continuing the mountains of karma, building it up, but actually dissolving some of it? How can we destroy this pain and suffering without destroying ourselves? These are all kind of like Kali teachings, where it's heavy duty in the pain and suffering body within the subconscious. The red energy, the real fire, almost blood red, associated with a lot of blood in connection to bloodlines, generational curses, ancestral trauma, associated with a lot of, karma on earth, right? Karma, mountains of karma. And associated a lot with the things, the causes and effects that have been cyclical, that have continued on, or the world's, the world man-made shaming and fear, and the ability to, how do you move beyond that? How do you transcend that or evolve beyond it? So it's always seen as this real, ability to understand your deathless being in such an intense force of it. Where people have that Kali energy, it's like they really learn about having to be in their power and use that power to destroy, divinely destroy the powerlessness how to dissolve it, how to, bring ourselves into a space of I'm able to see it, I'm able to remember it, know it, I've even experienced it, probably participated in it. But now I'm consciously choosing to bring a greater understanding to it, to bring a wisdom to it, to bring a sort of pain of that is this the clearing of it, like the tears that come, or the memories that come, and putting into this ability to remember destruction as in a natural form, in a way of getting us to evolve further. And in a way that isn't of more mountains of karma and suffering and pain, but it's in a way of bringing forth more of a understanding of our making, understanding of our connection to each other. And having more of a sense of an awakening in that. Helps us to learn the lessons of our connections. Help us to learn the lessons of our karmas. Help us to learn the lessons of the suffering. So that ideally we're able to kind of come to this place where we are no longer caught in the sufferings of the world in a way that keeps us in this state of seeing the damage, or seeing the crises, or seeing the change, but not really seeing the ability for us to remember our ability to use that force to be reckoned with, that power we all have, to invite in a life review, a shock, an understanding that brings us more into a purposeful movement with the inner enemy that we have, the demons, inner demons, that inner, destroyer versus the divine destroyer, and the creations, creativities, the sparks of light, the intelligence, the consciousness. And Kali is like drops in, goes mostly into those kind of lower vibrations to help us awaken our dignity, which is like the full remembrance of where we've been, where we are, where we're going. Full remembrance of pathways that lead to more the same traumas, pathways that lead us into liberation. And what is it we need to be or to do in this moment or moving forward will be different for every person. That's going to help us sort of bring that destruction, bring down, deconstruct, break down, So that real unbreakable thing that's probably covered in that, whatever is covering it, so that can be reached, so that can be seen. Sometimes it's like we don't really understand that most unbreakable thing about us, called emptiness or the soul, Holy Spirit, universe, unless we actually go into it, the layers and layers and layers of it. And I think that's what we're trying to get to, is that unbreakable place in us. But it's like we have to go through all these different experiences. We have to go into the things that are like kind of covering it with all this like fear and shame, pain and suffering. Destroy, break down all of that, for us to really see into something that actually is real. The most realist part of ourselves. And they say when you're nearest to the death energy or the ending or the closing or the destruction, that's when you really wake up. And you really, get to see the unbreakable thing. The reality. And you have to cross through all this pollution, this madness, and even these hell-being realms or whatever it is. Because the unbreakable thing, we'll say, is soul or, emptiness. It's not just going to find in the light realms, right? In this higher vibration. Yes. It's also about finding it in our darkness, those deep, darkest places in ourselves. Is like represents that real service of why we came to this planet. Why are we connected to this body? If we just want to be high dimensional, we'll just be high dimensional, not have a body. We have a body for a reason. There's something within that pain, in that suffering that kind of, keeps us on earth that we want to go into, but we have to deconstruct certain things. Because we'll never see it. We'll never have experience of it. We'll never really come aware of it. We start to break things down. And start to see certain things dissolve. Starting to see the change, even the chaos that comes. So you can start to see what is real and what is not real.